Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the controversy over Benjamin Netanyahu speaking before the U.S. Congress on the Iranian issue. In the last several years, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, that is the United States, France, England, China, and Russia, along with Germany, known as the P5+1, have been negotiating with Iran with the stated goal to prevent them from obtaining nuclear weapons. However, U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Corker said that all the world powers except the United States have stepped back from the negotiations, leaving, in essence, the United States alone in negotiating with Iran. It is evident that these negotiations are really not the P5+1 negotiations anymore, Corker said. I was in Germany this weekend for an international security conference and was very aware that this was becoming more of a one-on-one negotiation, he said. Corker and the Democrat he replaced as committee chairman, Senator Robert Menendez, left the latest briefing expressing concern about the administration basing negotiations on the need to maintain Iran's potential nuclear weapons breakout time to at least 1 year. One of the major concerns all along that is becoming more crystal clear to me is that we are, instead of preventing proliferation, we are managing proliferation, Menendez said. There is a March 31st deadline for a framework agreement with Iran. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry ruled out extending this deadline if an agreement is not made. Kerry said, "The only chance I can see of an extension at this point in time would be that you really have the outlines of an agreement." Kerry said that outlining the basics of the agreement was crucial before a possible extension could be considered, but reiterated his preference for sticking to the target date. "If we're not able to make the fundamental decisions that have to be made over the course of the next couple weeks, literally, I think it would be impossible to extend the March 31st date," Kerry said. The United States Congress is discussing imposing new sanctions upon Iran. However, the Obama administration does not want to impose new sanctions upon Iran at this time. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Corker said, "We're trying to find a constructive way for Congress to play its rightful role in these negotiations. I'm very disappointed that, in essence, what the Obama administration is saying is that they really don't want Congress to play a role in one of the most important geopolitical agreements that may take place during the rulership of this administration." U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken said the administration fears that any steps from Congress could alienate the other international partners in the negotiations. Corker objected to this suggestion, saying that he had spoken with many of the negotiating partners and none opposed Congress taking any action in ongoing talks to ensure the deal reached with Iran is a good one. U.S. President Barack Obama said that he would veto any bill that would impose further sanctions on Iran while negotiations continue and asked Congress to hold your fire. Obama said, "It's my team that's at the table. We are steeped in this stuff day in and day out. We don't make these decisions blindly," Obama said. "Congress needs to show patience." Obama said that the possibility of reaching a deal with Iran is less than 50-50, but Congress must not intervene until the negotiation process is allowed to play out completely. "There are no guarantees that negotiations will succeed, and I will keep all options on the table to prevent a nuclear Iran," Obama said. "But new sanctions passed by this Congress at this moment in time will all but guarantee that diplomacy fails, alienating America from its allies and ensuring that Iran starts up its nuclear program again." Some members of Congress oppose the nuclear negotiations taking place between Iran and the major world powers because they fear that the United States would sacrifice too much for the sake of reaching a deal. U.S. House Majority Leader John Boehner said many lawmakers are also weary that Obama will agree to a bad deal with Iran just for the sake of reaching one. Boehner said, "Obama expects us to stand idly by and do nothing while he cuts a bad deal with Iran. We're not going to allow allow that to happen. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, "The major powers in Iran are racing toward an agreement that will enable Iran to arm itself with nuclear weapons which will endanger the existence of the State of Israel. We will continue to take action and to lead the international effort against Iran's arming itself with nuclear weapons," Netanyahu said. Netanyahu declared that he was ready to go head-to-head with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in order to stop a bad deal with Iran. At the end of the week, Kerry and Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif announced their intention to complete the framework agreement by the end of March. And that is what makes it urgent to try and halt this bad and dangerous agreement, Netanyahu said. "We will continue to act and to lead the international efforts against the arming of Iran with nuclear weapons, and we will act in every way to foil the bad and dangerous agreement that would cast a heavy cloud over the future of Israel." The U.S. House Majority Leader John Boehner wrote a letter to Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asking him to speak before a bipartisan joint session of Congress on February the 11th. In explaining his reason for doing this, Boehner said, "Prime Minister Netanyahu is a great friend of the United States, and this invitation comes with our unwavering commitment to the security and the well-being of the people of Israel. In this time of challenge, I am asking the Prime Minister to address Congress on the grave threats radical Islam in Iran poses to our security and way of life. Americans and Israelis have always stood together and shared causes and common ideals, and now we must rise to the moment again." This would be Netanyahu's third appearance before a joint meeting of Congress. His last appearance was May the 24th, 2011. Since Netanyahu is coming to the United States to speak at the AIPAC conference in March, he requested that Boehner move his speaking date to March the 3rd. Boehner's team had been discussing this invite with Netanyahu for weeks, according to a House Republican leadership source who added the reason driving the invitation for Netanyahu to speak before Congress was the Obama administration's negotiations with Iran. Boehner said that he did not consult with Obama about the invitation to Netanyahu, saying, "The Congress can make this decision on its own." However, Boehner did inform Obama that Netanyahu would be speaking to the U.S. Congress. Boehner was asked why he didn't consult with Obama regarding inviting Netanyahu to speak, to which Boehner replied, "There is a serious threat that exists in the world, and Obama kind of glossed over this in his State of the Union speech." He added, "The fact is there needs to be a more serious conversation in the United States about how serious the Iranian threat is, as well as the threat from radical Islam." In Netanyahu accepting Boehner's invitation, the Obama administration said that it was done through a breach of protocol. The typical protocol would suggest that the leader of a country would contact the leader of another country when he's traveling there, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said. That certainly is how President Obama's trips are planned when he travels overseas. This particular event seems to be a departure from that protocol. Earnest said that the White House was made aware of the invitation before Boehner's office released a letter dated January the 21st inviting Netanyahu to address a joint session of Congress. However, the New York Times said that Netanyahu accepted the invitation from Boehner after Obama was informed of the invitation and not before. Also, Obama apparently didn't oppose the idea after being informed of it initially, given that Netanyahu's invitation went ahead as planned. In any event, Netanyahu's decision to accept Boehner's invitation and speak before a joint session of the U.S. Congress has caused a bitter dispute with U.S. President Barack Obama over the issue. At a White House news conference, Obama signaled his displeasure with the speech Netanyahu was scheduled to give on March the 3rd, suggesting that Netanyahu's visit 2 weeks before the Israeli election, scheduled for March the 17th, risk injecting politics into the relationship between the United States and Israel. Obama said, "It's important for us to maintain historical diplomatic protocols because the U.S.-Israeli relationship is not about a particular party. The way to preserve that is to make sure that it doesn't get clouded with what could be perceived as partisan politics." Obama said that while he saw no reason to extend the Iranian negotiations past a late March target for a framework agreement, it was important that the talks be allowed to continue before further sanctions are imposed upon Iran. He said, "It does not make sense to sour the negotiations a month or two before they're about to be completed, and we should play the process out. If no deal can be reached with Iran," Obama said that he will work with Congress to apply even stronger sanctions against them. Despite being opposed by Obama, Netanyahu said he plans to continue to give the March 3rd speech. Acknowledging a profound disagreement with the United States and the rest of the P5+1 powers over the offer that has been made to Iran, Netanyahu added, "I intend to speak about this issue before the March 24th congressional vote on possible new Iranian sanctions, and I intend to speak in the U.S. Congress because Congress might have an important role on a potential nuclear deal with Iran. The looming military danger from Iran justifies this move," Netanyahu said. "Iran is openly committed to Israel's destruction. Iran would be able, under this deal, to break out to a nuclear weapon in a short time, and within a few years to have the industrial capability to produce many nuclear bombs for the goal of our destruction." He added, "The present proposed U.S. offer to Iran threatens Israel's survival. Israel's survival is not a partisan issue, not in Israel nor in the United States. This doesn't mean that from time to time Israeli governments have not had serious disagreements with American administrations over the best way to achieve the security of Israel," he said. Israel's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, declared Israel's independence in the face of strong opposition from U.S. Secretary of State George Marshall, Netanyahu said, ticking off a lineup of disputes from former Prime Ministers Levi Eshkol to Ariel Sharon. Disagreements over Israel's security have occurred between prime ministers in Israel from the left and from the right, and American presidents from both parties. This is not a personal disagreement between President Obama and myself. I deeply appreciate all that he has done for Israel in many fields. Equally, I know that the President appreciates my responsibility and my foremost responsibility to protect and defend the security of the citizens of Israel. I am going to the United States not because I seek a confrontation with Obama, but because I must fulfill my obligation to speak up on a matter that affects the very survival of the State of Israel. Netanyahu compared the importance of his speech to the U.S. Congress to his recent appearance in France after last month's terror attacks against Jews. Netanyahu said, "I went to Paris not just as the Prime Minister of Israel, but as a representative of the entire Jewish people. Just as I went to Paris, so I will go any place I'm invited to convey the Israeli position against those who want to kill us. Those who want to kill us are, first and foremost, any Iranian regime that says outright it plans to destroy us. I will not hesitate to say what's needed to warn against this danger and prevent it." In response, Obama has decided to not meet with Netanyahu when he visits the United States in March. Regarding that decision, Obama said, "I don't want to be coy. The Prime Minister and I have a very real difference around Iran sanctions. Furthermore, Obama representatives said that Netanyahu ought to remember that President Obama has a year and a half left to his presidency, and that there will be a price to pay for making his decision to speak before the U.S. Congress." Well, that's going to conclude this week's report, where we shared with you the current situation in the ongoing negotiations with Iran and the controversy over Benjamin Netanyahu's acceptance of the U.S. House Majority Leader John Boehner to have Netanyahu speak before a joint session of Congress on March the 3rd over the threat imposed upon Israel if President Obama makes a hasty and bad deal in negotiations with Iran. Until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.